want snacks, buddy? Oh, get it, bud. Okay, welcome to another video. It's Sunday morning, and I'm out running some errands. Just leaving the gas station here. Headed to the hardware store. I'm going to look at some lockable deck boxes to put some stuff in the garage. Anyways, the reason I'm recording this video is because I just bought a Supra, a Mark IV Supra. I think what I'm going to do is just put some B-roll and some photos into the video while I talk. But yeah, it's a white 1998 Mark IV Supra. The car started out as a non-turbo automatic, and it was built by a local reputable shop here in SoCal, which has a lot of these kind of shops, but it was built by a local shop into a 6-speed turbo with the JDM VVTi 2JZ with a 6-speed. So it's in great condition. It was also recently tuned at the end of 2022 by a local tuner, which I'm trying to get in contact with now. But yeah, it looks good. The exterior is basically perfect. There's some stuff on the front end that's very common. Issues on the front end that are very common with modified Supras, like the under tray is missing, and the side panels on the under tray are like kind of cut up and rigged into place, and the front bumper is missing. Like the sides of the front bumper are missing some supports, so that's just to fit the intercooler. But these days there's a bunch of aftermarket stuff that fixes all that with like metal parts. I mean, they look like skid plates. I think a company called Dewla Designs, D-E-W-L-A. Dewla Designs does that. So I'm gonna probably pick up a set of, I guess, aero plates or aero parts, aero skid plates for the car, and then put those on at some point, and then try to fix the bumper, which is like, it just makes the sides of the front a little wobbly, which is, you know, looks fine, but is not ideal. So that's the only thing that's wrong with the exterior. Otherwise, it was also repainted. The car doesn't look like it's been in any accidents. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the exterior. On the interior, it was probably at about 90%. Some of the stuff that I've been doing over the past couple of weeks, as it's sitting waiting for registration, is I've just been like replacing little plastic bits and bobbles that the previous owner didn't feel like fixing. I also bought some accessories like the tools in the back, and for the target top. I'm trying to find a manual, but an owner's manual, but I did find all 3 service manuals. So the maintenance and the repair manual, service manual, and the electrical wiring diagram from Toyota. Oh yeah, and they look brand new, like new old stock. So that was crazy. I found them for $100 on eBay, so I immediately bought that as soon as I saw it. And I'm still looking for an owner's manual, so I've got some alerts set up on eBay for that. But other than that, interior is in great condition. Everything seems to work, except for like the boost gauge, which I have to go in and fix. It's an aftermarket Gretty gauge, so that's either working or not. And if it's not working, then I'm just going to replace it. But it might just be wiring, so I'll figure that out. And then like all the little plastic clips seem to be in good condition. A couple things on the doors need to be replaced, but other than that, it's good. And I did have to buy a bunch of like caps for the screws in the trunk area, which is a common thing that goes in this one. But other than that, I would say it's, you know, it started at 90%, and I'm at 95 now, and it should be at 100% pretty soon. So that's good. I also need to get it to a tuner, just to check that everything's good for street driving, and figure out like what all the boost settings and AEM. It's got an AEM standalone, so I'm gonna hook a laptop up to it, but I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm gonna take a first pass at it and then probably send it to a shop and have a professional take a look at it. Anyways, so I got a pretty good price on it. It was actually on Bring a Trailer, but it didn't meet reserve. And then just through chance, I was looking for a Supra, the last month or so, and I ran across a broker who knew the owner of the car, and he lined up a deal, and I got a pretty good price on it. For what it is, it's obviously a rebuilt NAT, or converted NAT to 6-speed JDM VVTi 2JZ drivetrain, including the diff and all that stuff. So it's got all the right parts, but it is a high mileage motor swapped car. So it's not a collector car per se. Like, it's not an original car. It doesn't. It's been repainted. It doesn't have like the original stuff that came with it. And also, the NA cars never came with a lot of the stuff that the turbo cars came with, like the bigger brakes and motor, obviously, the 6-speed diff, and like the front intercooler, and the engine's different compression. I mean, 2JZ is well known. Everyone knows all the differences, so it's for what it is, a converted car. It's very, very clean, and I'm happy with that, and I got a good price on it. And so I might have a little bit of a unique perspective on the pricing, because I actually had a 97 twin-turbo automatic in high school and college, which is super rare. And so I entered high school in 97, and I graduated college in 05, and I basically had the car from 99 to 06. And it was a 97 black limited edition automatic turbo. And it was BPU. I had, over the course of the 5 or 6 years that I owned it, I had, made some pretty minor mods, and then right before I sold it, I put a set of CCWs on there. So it was in fairly good condition when I sold it. The only thing is it had like 180,000 miles, and something was starting to go. Like, I drove the shit out of that thing, and the power was starting to fall off, and I was like, okay, well, what do I do here? Remember, this is 2001, so it's like, okay, what do I do here? Do I rebuild the stock twins and maybe rip the motor apart and upgrade the internals, or do I just sell this thing? And being young, and the car was very old, so it was an old car. It was almost 10 years old at that point. Old car, young guy. I had a pretty good job out of college. I just sold it for like close to basically $20,000, and that was near the bottom of the depreciation curve for those cars. But it was a very, very high mileage, almost 200,000 miles, automatic car with like probably busted turbos. Like this, like they probably just weren't. I don't know, like either the seals or the bearings or something had probably gone, and they just weren't making much boost. Anyways, so I sold that car and got an NSX and a bunch of other cars before I landed on 911s, which I've had for the past 10, 15 years, GT3s and turbos. So this is very, very common for guys who had Supras back in the day. We basically all just got rid of them at some point, or maybe not. Maybe we didn't get rid of them, but we all graduated to like either Porsches or BMWs or something, right? Less so BMWs, more so Porsches. Like, I can think of at least 4 or 5 dudes that I knew on super forums that like showed up on Red List 10 years later with their 911 turbos or GT3s. So it's a super common story. But anyways, about the pricing, the pricing for these cars, I mean, it's basically hovering around, if I were to take a guess, the median is going to be around 100K average, probably a little bit lower, because since there's so many like NA autos and cars and like abandoned project cars and all that stuff. So, you know, the really tired ones drag the average down a little, but the really nice ones of any spec kind of top out right now at around like 120 to 150K, and those aren't moving. So I think 120K. I didn't pay anywhere near 120K, but I think that's kind of a reach at this point in time. Interest rates are super high right now compared to where they were 2 or 3 years ago. You know, right now I think they're hovering around 8% if you have flawless credit, and like 15 to 20% if you don't. So that's prohibitive. I don't think people are you know, stretching themselves for 15% to buy a 30-year-old Toyota. I don't think that's happening for 25 to 30-year-old Toyota. However, having said that, I do not think the prices will go much lower than the median, which let's say 70, 80, 90, around there, right? And honestly, if you're buying a 30-year-old Toyota, 70, 80 versus 90, like that's all kind of the same price, because you know exactly what you're getting. You just want the best car you can. It doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you're paying 70 or 80. Not really. Like the only thing you're going to be doing otherwise, you know, there's 3 options, right? Like buy a middle of the road car for 70, 80, 90, something like that. Go crazy and buy a super stock, like high quality, low mileage car for 100 plus, or buy a project car with a lower spec, or that's just clapped out for like 40 or 50, right? So I think that's just going to be the range for quite a while now, because you know, the people who can't really afford to buy them just aren't, because they can't afford the interest rates, or they just won't get financed. Because if you try to finance a 30-year-old collector car, like Capital One's not going to do that, right? That's just not. They don't even care about that market. So you have to go to a specialty finance company, which, you know, that's fine, but they have limitations on who they lease to, or who they lend to, and all that stuff. So that's tough. Insurance is also tough. I had to get Hagerty because nobody's gonna insure a car that old for $100 grand, basically. So you have to do stated value insurance from a company like Hagerty or maybe Chubb or one of these other companies that do basically insurance for rich people, right? So that's another hurdle that your average Joe isn't going to know about or even want. And then, you know, there are people like me who are, like, I just turned 40 this year. So I'm 40 years old, I'm single, no plans on getting married, no plans on having kids, I'm successful in my career. Like, it just literally does not matter to me. I can just buy another car. So it doesn't matter what interest rates do. It doesn't matter if the economy goes to shit. Like, I just have plenty of like savings and money and investments. I have a house, or not a house, I have a condo at like 2.75% interest. So, you know, I'm basically financially able to just buy this car without any repercussions whatsoever. And, you know, people like me will keep the values at a certain level, but I'm also not going to spend 150 grand on a car that I drove in high school. Like, I'm not that rich. And that, you know, there's always that dynamic to keep in mind. Go. Yeah, going from Porsche 911s and back into a Supra is kind of crazy, because the last time I sat in a Supra and drove one around was nearly 20 years ago. And, you know, it's definitely nostalgic. It's definitely strange to be in a car that I drove when I was a kid. But at the same time, it's very familiar because, you know, I'm a big fan of Toyota, obviously. I'm sitting in one right now. Also another 6-speed Toyota. And like a lot of the controls are just the same. This is a 2015, so it's, you know, it's not brand new, but it's also not ancient. And a lot of the controls are like identical. Like all the turn signal and wiper stalks and all that stuff, cruise control and all that, are identical. The transmission feels very similar, even though one's German, one's Japanese. I mean, the way that they have like the shift stuff set up is very similar. And then, yeah, I mean, it's just another Toyota. Like the key looks the same. So it's just a strange feeling to be back in that car. It's pretty wild how far the aftermarket for Mark IV Supras has come, especially if you consider the fact that the number of these cars available and being worked on or modified, it's basically always going down, right? Like the number of cars that get crashed or abandoned or whatever, that's always, you know, that number is always going up, which means the amount of actual like workable cars on the market are always going down. So I mean, I guess the percentage of people who modify them, I guess, is going up, so maybe that that's where all the demand is coming from. But yeah, like all these really common issues back in the day that everyone had no way of solving really, other than custom fabrication. Now just there's like 2 or 3 aftermarket products for everything that used to be a big deal, like a pain in the ass to solve. You know, the rise of standalone ECUs in the past 5 to 10 years has really changed the game in terms of the ability to like just easily add a bunch of horsepower. Like back in the day, all the Apexy and HKS fuel computer or fuel controller FCON stuff, all that stuff was super janky and required a ton of like tapping into wires and custom work in the wiring harness and all this stuff. Now you can just buy an aftermarket wiring harness and an aftermarket standalone ECU and just plug it all in, basically, and you know, take it to a tuner and they can just make horsepower with it. So it's, you know, it's certainly not, I wouldn't call it easy, but it's more straightforward now. So you can just get a list of parts, take it to a tuner, and they'll know what to do. You know, it's still pretty expensive, and you know, you're gonna have to wait for your turn to get in line for all this stuff. But you know, it's like the path is known now. It's not like experimental at this point. One thing also that people kind of forget is back in the day, you know, at least from the time of my ownership in '99 to 05, 06, Supras were always expensive and rare and hard to find and kind of exclusive. They were never like that cheap, you know what I mean? And if they were cheap, they required a bunch of work and a bunch of tuning and a bunch of aftermarket parts and OEM replacement parts. And you know, even before the Fast and Furious movie came out, I had mine before the movie came out. You know, they were still pretty, I don't know what the right word is, I guess, like they were still in the consciousness, like the import scene consciousness as like a very special car. So it's not like there's some undiscovered gem that like shot up in price just recently. You know, back in the day, the good ones were always really expensive. I mean, if you take, for example, the amount that I paid for mine, with a ton of aftermarket stuff on it and like a and being in good condition, if you adjust for inflation, it's basically the same price as it was when it was new. So you know, that's not like so crazy to think about, right? Like a very unique like Halo car is basically the same price as it was new in real money terms 25 years later. It's like, yeah, that's kind of, you know, most cars don't do that, but at the same time, the kind of cars that anyone would put into the same category as the Supra, they all kind of fit that, you know, they all kind of fit that description. Like, you can't buy Like, good luck even finding a Celica GT or like a GT4 All-Track or whatever, you know, or an MR2 turbo. Like, they just don't exist anymore. So it's really not that surprising that the Supra is up near 100 grand at a median, for the median price. Anyways, I'm gonna run into the hardware store. So anyways, yeah, Supras have always been kind of up there, even before the Fast and Furious movie. I mean, obviously that didn't help the prices, but you know, I mean, the reason they went out of production is because they were too expensive. So it's, you know, they're definitely not like some undiscovered gem or whatever. They've always been up there in mind share as well as price. So it's, you know, it's basically just continuing a trend. I think, you know, there may have been a dip at some point, maybe around 2010 or something, where there were just a bunch of like old and clapped out cars on the market. Because let's be honest, there are some pretty hideous Supras out there with terrible wheels, shitty mods, terrible bodywork and body kits. I mean, there's a bunch of them. So I think there was a point in time around 2010, maybe around there, where the cars, like all the worst cars hit the market, and I think that's, you know, that may have been a quote-unquote dip in the market at that time, but these days, you know, those cars are getting snapped up too. And I think you're only the very, very worst examples, like not running, totally butchered body, or just rolling chassis, are going to be under 20 grand or 30 grand or whatever. So, but I mean, that's fine, you know. And if you're like waiting for the price of a good quality car to come down, I think you're going to be waiting for quite a while, because in order for that to happen, there has to be a 2008 level financial crisis, and like, you are not going to be the only one that is unscathed in a crisis that big. Like for asset values, like highly desirable classic cars to come down by, you know, 30%, 40%, that means the bottom has fallen out of pretty much anything that rich people buy. So that means your house is going to be upside down if you bought recently. That means all of your stocks are going to be in the toilet. You might lose your job, or if you don't lose your job, you're going to be in such a precarious position that you are not going to want to spend over $50,000 on a 30-year-old Toyota. I mean, just think about it, right? Like, in that kind of a scenario, everyone will be affected somehow. And, you know, like, people, there are way richer people that will scoop up any distressed Supra sales that they see. Especially since, like, you know, the vast majority of these Supra transactions are just done privately. You know, these cars aren't listed on Auto Trader or whatever, cars.com. They're sure as hell not at, you know, Carvana or whatever, like all these mega dealers. So, my advice to you is, if you're in the market for one of these things, start calling around. Like, pick up the actual phone. Like, when you're dealing with assets like these, you're dealing with something that there's basically more demand than supply for the good quality examples, right? So buying one of these things is like, it's almost like a inverted sales process. Like, you have to talk to a lot of people and really, you know, put yourself out there and communicate with folks that could potentially be a source, like a lead, basically. You have to chase down leads when you're doing this stuff. So, you know, when I was looking for mine, I mean, I talked to all sorts of people. I waited for months and months, and there's still an element of luck. You know, you have to just maximize the surface area that you're exposed to in terms of like finding cars. And that means calling all the dealers, calling all the brokers, telling them, hey, this is my budget, this is what I'm looking for. If you run across anything, let me know. Because they have their networks and their networks have their networks, so it's, you have to like kind of insert yourself into the ecosystem of people buying and selling, trading these cars. So it's you can't just like sit on Bring a Trailer or Cars and Bids or Carvana or not Carvana, Auto Tempest or whatever, and just like rely on that to work. That can work. It obviously can work. There's nothing wrong with that. But all I'm saying is, in addition to looking at the listing sites, you have to do your footwork and call around, because you don't know who's doing what at any time, right? Like, there's people, shops, customers that are working on project cars that change their mind, that their financial situation changes, or they have a kid or whatever, and they just want to sell their car. So it's a lot of different factors that you can't really know about ahead of time. You just have to get out there and do it, and make your demand, make your presence known that you're in the market for one of these cars. But other than that, I mean, I don't have any big plans other than finishing registration and driving this thing. I do have to get it, like I said, I do have to get it to a tuner and just confirm that the thing is safe to drive. Confirm all the boost settings and fuel maps, fuel type. Confirm all the controls. Like, there's a couple of switches on the dash that are like the replacement, like where the traction control switches. Those are actually filled in with actual switches, so I don't know what those do. They're unlabeled, so that's kind of weird. But I have to figure out what those are for, or if they're just switches that do nothing, or what. I bought a silencer for the exhaust because I was afraid that it would be too loud for my parking garage. But as it turns out, my GT3 is louder, and it actually sets off the alarm on the Supra. So that was unexpected. But I bought a silencer, and I think that'll be nice to have, just because you don't always want to drive around with a loud ass 4-inch titanium exhaust like the one on that car. But yeah, other than that, I'm not going to do anything to the body. I like stock with nice wheels and a nice suspension is what I like. I don't need the TRD wing. I don't need side skirts. I don't need a front bumper. I don't need any of that stuff. Because I just like OEM with nice wheels. So yeah, other than that, those are my thoughts on the Supra. If you're looking for one, I wish you the best of luck. Eventually you'll find your car. It'll take a few months. You probably will end up paying a little bit more than you want, but as long as it's a good car, and you're not trying to flip it. Like, if you're trying to buy the car to enjoy it, or because you have nostalgia for the good old days, or you had one back in the day, that's a good reason to buy a car. That's why people buy classic cars. If you're trying to buy a car to like sit on and flip in 2 years, I don't know. That is fraught with peril. If you're not a dealer, if that's not what you do for a living, and you know exactly how to do that, I think you're going to have a bad time. But if you are really into the cars and plan on using it and enjoying it as a vehicle, an endangered species these days, I think you're going to do fine, and you're going to have a great time. And just try not to spend too much money. Don't be one of these guys that spends $150,000 for a stock car. Which, by the way, a stock Supra is not that fun. It's just not that great. There's a reason why people modified the hell out of these things. Yeah. So, anyways, have a great day. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this beautiful day in SoCal, and I hope to catch you on the next one. All right.